The United States has just bombed one of the most important islands on Earth. But there's one reason they didn't destroy the oil terminal on that island during the strike. And that decision could determine how the war unfolds. On March the 13th, US airstrikes hit every known Iranian military target on Kharg Island, destroying defences that protected Iran's most important oil export hub. Yet the oil terminals themselves were left untouched. Why would the US attack the island but deliberately avoid hitting the things that make it so valuable? To understand that decision, you first have to understand how important Kharg Island really is. Kharg Island sits just 25 kilometers off Iran's coast in the Persian Gulf. It's a very small island with an area of approximately 20 square kilometers, but this island is the center of Iran's oil export system. Massive storage tanks, pipelines feeding crude oil from mainland oil fields, and huge loading terminals where giant tankers fill up before sailing toward Asia. For decades, most of Iran's oil exports have passed through Kharg Island. At full capacity, the terminal can load between 1.5 and 1.7 million barrels of oil every day, which means this island functions like a giant economic valve. Turn it off, and Iran's most important source of revenue could slow dramatically, which is why Kharg quickly became a target once the war began. On March the 13th, US forces launched a major bombing raid on the island. According to the White House, the airstrikes obliterated Iranian military installations on Kharg, including defensive positions protecting the export terminal. But the oil infrastructure itself was deliberately spared. President Donald Trump said the United States chose not to destroy the oil facilities for reasons of decency. However, he also issued a warning. If Iran interferes with shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, the US could reconsider that decision. So, in other words, the oil terminal is now effectively been held as insurance against Iranian actions elsewhere, particularly the Strait of Hormuz. At first glance, destroying Kharg's oil facilities might seem like the obvious strategy. After all, the island handles the majority of Iran's crude exports. But this is where the situation becomes much more dangerous, because wiping out the terminal could trigger something far bigger than an economic hit to Iran. It could shock the entire global energy system. Kharg is one of the most important oil export hubs in the Persian Gulf. Major disruption there could send oil prices skyrocketing worldwide, and that kind of shock would hit not only just Iran, but also the United States, Europe and Asia. So instead of destroying the terminal, the US chose a different approach. Remove the defences, leave the infrastructure, and keep the option to destroy it later if the war escalates. Some strategists once suggested that the United States might try to capture Kharg Island, but that idea presents some serious problems. The island sits just 25 kilometers from Iran's mainland, which means Iranian missiles, drones and artillery could strike it constantly. Defending the island would require air defense systems, naval protection and constant resupply across open water. And Iran has spent decades preparing for this type of fight. Instead of matching the US Navy ship for ship, Iran relies on asymmetric tactics. Anti-ship missiles, naval mines, fast attack boats and drone swarms. Even if the island were captured, holding it could become a long and expensive battle, which is exactly the kind of war Iran would prefer. By striking military defences but sparing the oil terminal, the United States may have created a powerful strategic lever. Kharg's infrastructure is still there, still valuable, but now it's far more valuable, which means Washington now has the option to shut down Iran's oil exports at any moment, without having to occupy the island. But Kharg is only part of the bigger story, because a battle zone of greater importance in this war may lie somewhere else entirely. Just south of Kharg lies one of the most important waterways on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow channel connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, and roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through it. If Iran tried to block the strait, with mines, missiles or naval attacks, the consequences for the global economy could be immediate. That's why the United States has warned that any interference with shipping there could trigger further strikes on Kharg Island's oil infrastructure. Kharg Island may look small on a map, but it sits at the centre of one of the most important energy networks on Earth. The US strikes on March 13th changed the island's role in the war, not by destroying it, but by stripping away the defences that protect it. For now, the oil still flows, but the island and the infrastructure that powers Iran's economy is now sitting under a very clear threat. And whether that threat is ever carried out could shape the future of this conflict. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.